Welcome to the KommunityKoin podcast. Today's subject. So, what exactly is time banking? This is something that I'm having a lot of trouble getting people to understand. I talk to a lot of people about it all day, every day, basically, and I get kind of the same questions. And so we're going to address some of those questions here. People often find it very difficult to understand the concept. So let's see if we can clear it up a bit. Even though time banking is not the same as bartering, let's talk about it initially as if it were the same. Let's talk about bartering, and then we will talk about how time banking differs from that. In bartering, you have something, whether it's an item or a good or a service, that someone else may want, and someone else has something that you want. So in bartering, you exchange the thing that you have for the thing that the other person has. No money changes hands. Instead, you just trade what you have for what the other person has. And this can work very well. If you have chickens that lay eggs and your neighbor wants eggs and your neighbor repairs lawnmowers and you happen to need your lawnmower repaired, then it works out. But what if you need your lawnmower repaired and the neighbor doesn't like eggs? What do you do then? Well, in the first example where you just trade the eggs for the lawnmower repair, that's called direct bartering. But if the neighbor doesn't like eggs and you still need your lawnmower repaired, then you have to do what's called indirect bartering. And money is an example of an indirect barter instrument. For example, this guy can sell his eggs for money and then use the money to pay someone to fix his lawnmower. It's still a barter, but it's indirect, using dollars as an indirect barter instrument. And that makes it so much easier. But what happens if money goes away, or if money loses a significant amount of its value? Whether it's because of economic collapse or economic crisis, banking collapse, hyperinflation, government or political instability, or just general economic instability for whatever reason. This happens alarmingly often all around the world. It's happened in every country that has ever existed at some point, and if you think that your country or government is immune from that, you are definitely mistaken. Let's look a little bit at Venezuela. The Venezuelan political and economic crisis, which has led to more than 7 million people leaving the country since 2015, came about as a result of a fairly common political situation. Despite being one of the most oil-rich countries in the world, the political situation, one where the elected president decided to make radical political and social changes, though they seemed to be a good thing at the time, ultimately led them down a road of economic collapse. In fact, if we look back through history, we find that anytime a government makes radical changes and starts moving quickly in a different direction, instability tends to follow. And that often leads to economic consequences. Have you noticed any other governments in the world making radical political or social changes in recent years? And in more recent times, Argentina and Lebanon have suffered the same fate as Venezuela's economy. And if we were to look closely, we would see that dozens of countries around the world have suffered devastating economic problems in the last few decades. So when Venezuela suffered its economic crisis and the bolivar became almost worthless in a very short period of time, what were the Venezuelans to do? The money which was the indirect barter instrument, wasn't working anymore because it had essentially no value. So they went back to bartering with one another. But that is not as simple as it sounds, because, as we mentioned, if you have eggs and you need your lawnmower repaired, the person that repairs the lawnmower needs to want your eggs. So direct bartering has so many problems. And we all think, well, this could never happen to us because, of course, our country's economic situation is eternally stable. But just for the sake of argument, what if your country did suffer an economic collapse and you had to return to direct bartering? You had no other choice. But what if there were an alternative indirect barter instrument that would make things much easier? Let's say that your country, wherever you live, does suffer an economic collapse like Venezuela, and you decide that you are going to build some sort of an exchange community, a barter community. And let's say that you have 50 people. Each of them has their own skills and resources to offer. Let's say that Bob enjoys cutting grass and working in the yard, and Sally enjoys giving piano lessons. Betty is an excellent homeopath, and Janice is a gardener and grows vegetables. Randy is a handyman and can fix just about anything. Rick is a hairstylist. Miguel is very good at fixing cars, and Lily loves to cook. John speaks several languages and likes to tutor people. Jim is a tax accountant, and Frank is a web designer. And the list goes on until we get to all 50 people. But then we have the situation, Sally would like for Bob to cut her grass, but Bob does not want to take piano lessons. Bob would like a haircut, but Rick likes cutting his own grass. Randy would like to learn to speak Spanish, but John doesn't need anything fixed around the house. Frank needs his taxes done, but Jim does not need a website, etc., etc. So there's one guy in this community, we'll call him Jeff, and he owns a printing shop. And he and some of the managing members of the community decide that they are going to print their own barter coupons. These coupons will act as an indirect barter instrument so that Lily can get vegetables from Janice's garden by giving her coupons, and Janice can get Spanish lessons from John, and Randy can get a haircut from Rick, all paying with their barter coupons. This little community develops into a thriving economy where barter coupons are the currency rather than dollars. This is an example of a nascent market economy. A market economy is an economy based on supply and demand and the idea of profitability. Each member of the economy tries to maximize their profit in dealing with other members of the community, and given enough time, this little barter community would grow into an economy similar to that of a government economy. This is just the nature of a market economy. Time banking is very different, however. If this community of 50 people had adopted a core economy philosophy rather than a market economy philosophy, it would have been a very different picture. The core economy is not so much concerned about supply and demand and profitability. The core economy is mainly concerned with community building, networking, goodwill, and neighborliness. In the core economy, people do things for the other members of their community because it's the right thing to do, not just because it's profitable. In a core economy driven community, Janice would just give her vegetables to Lily without expecting compensation or the receipt of something of equal value. So then, how is this helpful to members of the community? Nobody's making a profit. How could this possibly be a good thing? This is where time banking comes in. Time banking is a way of keeping track of charitable contributions to members of a community in such a way that All members of the community receive an equitable share of the resources of that community. Bob can cut people's grass, Sally can give piano lessons, Betty can treat people with her homeopathic remedies, Janice can give vegetables to other members of the community, Randy can help fix things around the house, Rick can cut people's hair, and Miguel can fix cars, etc., all without compensation. And so at this point, you're probably having a panic attack saying, nobody's getting paid. How are people going to pay their bills? This is all well and good, the idea of helping people for no compensation, but we all have bills to pay. Well, just keep listening, and the panic attack maybe will subside. All of the members of this community have paying jobs where they earn money to pay the bills that they need to pay with money. But in addition to that, they also belong to a time banking community where they can build mutual assistance and mutual aid relationships within that network. We call this social capital. And within this network, they have access to resources from other members of their community. The things that they gain from being a part of this community, they gain free of charge, but they still gain. And the time banking system keeps track of all of these things so that no one member of the community is giving or receiving more than their fair share. Time banking is not a way of replacing money or replacing the market economy. Time banking is a way of supplementing the market economy, supplementing money. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you don't have quite enough money to meet all of your needs? Well, if you are part of a time banking community, maybe those needs would get met without money. By building a mutual aid network, a person has access to resources that they need without having to pay to receive those resources. What they do instead is they provide resources to other members of the community. This is all done in an equitable and accountable way. Think of it like this. You're working on your car and you run into a situation where you don't know exactly what to do. So you call your brother-in-law, who happens to be an auto mechanic, and he comes over and he helps you. He's not expecting to be paid for that. But maybe 6 months later, he's moving and he needs your help. You don't charge him for that either. This is what mutual aid is about, helping each other in times of need. Time banking just keeps track of these things so that mutual assistance can be done on a larger scale and in a way that is fair and balanced. Imagine it this way. Think of it as if you're a part of a time banking community, you are part of a really big family, all helping each other when help is needed. No one is paying for the help that they are getting, but they're getting the help anyway. And imagine that through time banking, this family has 1 million members. That's a lot of help. But when you have that many members, you have to have a system to keep track of it all. And that's where KommunityKoin comes in. KommunityKoin is a way of keeping track of people helping each other. We utilize the coinpurse.com token system to track people's contributions and volunteer work. And if, say, for example, there were 10 million subscribers to coinpurse.com all around the world, and you are a subscriber and you're vacationing in Paris, well, you have family members in Paris if you need help. Anyone in Paris who is a subscriber to coinpurse.com is someone that you can time bank with. If you are a member of this particular community, the KommunityKoin community that uses coinpurse.com, then anyone in the world that is a member of that community is a part of your time banking community. That is a lot of help. So I hope that this clears up some of the questions, because the most common question I get is, well, why don't I just use money? Why should I do this? And the answer to that, as you've heard, is, well, you should use money when you have money and when money is appropriate to use. But that doesn't mean that you should not also build a time banking community, because you may need to use that as well. So thank you for